You're listening to the Inflamed and Exhausted Podcast, the show for women who are tired of being tired. I'm Lieah Torbert, CEO and co-founder of Wellness by Davlie, and I've been where you are, burned out, foggy, and wondering why my body couldn't just bounce back like it used to. On this podcast, we'll uncover the real reasons behind your fatigue, inflammation, and hormonal shifts, and I'll give you practical tools and guidance to support your body, restore your energy, and take back your health, one small step at a time. Let's get to it. Welcome everyone to today's episode of the Inflamed and Exhausted Podcast, where we're talking about all of the reasons why women are tired and we can't focus correctly, and we just feel like we can't do all the things that we need to do every day because our bodies are fighting us. And we have a very important guest on the show today, Dr. Aalia Al-Barwani, MD. She's a double board certified physician in Family and Obesity Medicine, a certified Master NLP, which is Neuro-Linguistic Programming coach, and she's also the founder of Albidaya Wellness, a virtual practice focused on sustainable weight wellness and emotional well-being. With a unique blend of science, mindset, and holistic tools, Dr. Aalia helps high-performing women just like us break free from cycles of stress, emotional eating, and burnout to reconnect with their healthiest, most grounded selves. After years in clinical medicine, Dr. Aalia realized that real lasting change isn't just about willpower, it's about identity, nervous system regulation, and healing the subconscious patterns that drive our behaviors. She now combines evidence-based medicine with coaching techniques like mindfulness, breathwork, and subconscious reprogramming to help her clients thrive and not just survive. Through her talks, retreats, and immersive wellness experiences, Dr. Aalia empowers individuals to become active participants in their health journey. Her work supports the very mission of this series to enhance self-care and build healthier communities through self-awareness and personal transformation. So welcome to the show today. I'm so excited and honored to have you as a guest.
Hi, Lieah. Thank you so much for having me, and great job on all the pronunciations for my name without even practicing. You did great. Thank you. It's an honor to be here today.
So I'd like, if you could, to just tell the ladies that are listening a little bit more about your background and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, I'd love to. So as you said in the introduction, I'm double board certified in family medicine and obesity medicine. And I started my practice in obesity medicine some years ago. And when I started my practice, I was seeing the same pattern, which is women knowing what they needed to do to be healthy, but feeling stuck when it came to actually doing the thing. These were not lazy or unmotivated women, like they were high, as you said earlier, high performing, high achieving women, and recognizing that what they really needed was a space to unpack the stress, emotional overwhelm, and the deep identity patterns that were sabotaging essentially their health. And so that's what led me on this mission to really understand how to bridge that gap. So I went back and got my master's certification training in subconscious reprogramming and coaching. And that has really allowed me to gain the skills and the tools to be able to bridge that gap in real time for my clients. Since my practice's name is Albidaya, which is an Arabic word that means the beginning. And so I wanted to offer women a fresh start in their health journey. Thank you. Rooted in science and soul, right? So kind of bringing the two together.
Now that is wonderful. And just listening to you here talk about that, it brought me back to the end of 2021 for me. I was working as a controller for a company in the Woodlands area, and I was super stressed out, and I wasn't eating right, and I wasn't taking care of myself. And I really felt myself struggling, like every day getting up, trying to face everything mentally, physically, like I was falling apart and I didn't know what to do. So understanding, like I didn't even know back then that people like you were out there as resources. So I'm really glad that at least I'm able to help get the message out today, because I could have definitely used someone like you in my corner back then. I had to struggle a lot to figure out how to get where I am right now. So
yeah. Oh, thank you, Lieah. And honestly, that's a common story for a lot of women, a lot of people, and physicians are trained really well in traditional medicine. And when there's a time for that, that's great. I wish that we had more training when it came to a holistic approach where it's more than just a paragraph to say, oh, and encourage meditation, balanced diet, exercise, right? Like, what does that even mean, really? And I feel like when I was on the other side of things before I got my training, and I went to really good medical and residency programs, I was not able, when a patient really dug deep and said, okay, tell me exactly what you mean by that, because the sound bite is wonderful, but what does that actually mean for me in my day to day? I struggle to answer that, to help them answer that question, right? And really understanding what I know now and probably what you needed then, which is to listen to what your body's trying to tell you and to do a little bit more work when it came to regulating our nervous system, because that's really when stress is running the show, is when we're not in we don't have a regulated nervous system. I think those kinds of tools and moving in that direction. I'm not against traditional medicine. I practice traditional medicine as well. However, I think it's important to have a little bit more of a balance than we currently do.
I totally agree coming from the holistic nutrition side. Like there's a lot of things that my primary care doctor and my specialist, like they're amazing at what they do. But like you said, right, they don't have the time to really dive into some of these things, and they may not even have had access or awareness to them. And so like I've seen, and I know many of the people that I talk to, they experience some frustration talking to their doctors about these things, and they feel like they're not heard. And unfortunately, I don't think it's anything necessarily on the doctor's side. It's just the way modern medicine runs now. It's very difficult to really dive into those things. I'm happy that you made the transition and you're on this side now.
Thank you. Me too.
I know that there are tons of things that we could talk about today, but when we spoke before, one of the things that really resonated with me was your focus on emotional eating and helping women really make that transition from having their emotions control what they're eating, when they're eating, how much they're eating, all of those things, and really helping them gain control and take those next steps into wellness. So I'd really love if you could share, because I know the people listening, they may not understand the difference between just really enjoying your food and having an emotional connection to the food that really drives your behavior.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I love talking about this. It is something that I noticed oftentimes with my patients that was silently, or maybe I shouldn't say silently, but like subconsciously, maybe a better way to describe it, sabotaging their efforts so that like their weight loss journey, right? So a lot of the women come to me to help with them to lose weight. It felt like two steps forward, sometimes three steps back, sometimes two steps forward, one step back, right? And emotional eating, the way that I understand the definition of that term is when we reach for food as our primary way of like coping, soothing, or regulating big emotions that we're experiencing in our day to day. And so the way that without actually feeling or processing the emotion itself. And the difference between emotional eating and just enjoying food, which is also really important, right, for survival, to enjoy the foods that we're eating so that we continue to do so, is that oftentimes when you do enjoy food, your favorite dish with loved ones, or even if you do choose to have some ice cream at the end of a long day, is that oftentimes that's an intentional behavior that we're aware of and that we've planned, as opposed to what happens in emotional eating, where it's very much unintentional, subconscious, happens often automatically. And it's not used, or it's used, as I said earlier, as our primary way to cope, like whether it's from anxiety or stress or boredom or anger or sadness or loneliness. It's usually driven by an emotion that is overwhelming, as opposed to being attracted to food when we're enjoying it, being like, this is something I'm intentionally making an effort to do because I love this food. And so
I
that's,
can I can
yeah.
definitely identify with that. There are many times, especially with all the stresses of the pandemic and the different things that we all went through during that time period. I don't know about some of the people listening, but I know, especially in the beginning of that time, I ate a bunch of things that I knew I shouldn't be eating, but they just made me feel better. And I drank a little too much. It's the stress and everything else. And I've heard the same story from a lot of people feeling shut in their houses and disconnected from their families and their workplaces. And food and alcohol were big, big things during that time, just to try to help get through and deal with all of those emotions.
100%. And you said so beautifully. It was a stressful time. It was a time, and it was what we had easily accessible to us and available and legal to soothe our emotions, right? And that you highlighted a few beautiful points about how it's one of the things that I commonly seen is it's driven by stress. That's a very common trigger for emotional eating. And the other part of it is that I want to drive home, particularly with emotional eating, is when it becomes our primary. I want to highlight this because this is really important, is that when it becomes our primary way to cope. And so when we were in lockdown, people who used to enjoy exercising and having community and connection, those other ways of soothing or of addressing our emotion, whatever we were going through, including stress, those were knocked out. We couldn't do those things, right, for our safety and survival. And so emotional eating, a lot of people turn to it because those other things were no longer available. Now, we're thankfully out of the core of the pandemic. We still have COVID around, but we're no longer in a pandemic. And it's just the same thing that's happening for a lot of people on the day-to-day, where they're experiencing stress in their bodies to an extent that is really high. And the other thing, which reminds me of what I was going somewhere with the eating that you had said specifically, the kinds of food that we reach for when we're feeling emotionally vulnerable are foods that are high in fat, salt, and sugar. And on a biological level or on a physiological level, the reason this is the case, right? Like no one's like, oh, I'm so stressed right now, I could eat an apple. Like no one's saying that, right?
Never, not one time.
Talk to me because I need to figure out how you're wired. Anyway, and so the reason is, like on a physiological level, is that these three things, right, sugar, fat, and salt, raise our feel-good dopamine hormones, right, receptors, and they activate them and they release dopamine, which we know is associated with like just this feeling of just feeling good, essentially. And so then no matter what you're experiencing or the reason or the trigger that you are soothing for, whether it's sadness, loneliness, etc., doesn't matter. Food will take care of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's like I remember, like, even though like my brain's going, why am I going through the Whataburger drive-through right now? My body's like, just give me the French fries and get out of my way. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
It was crazy because the little voice in the back of my head is like, we don't need to be doing this. I know better. But like, I couldn't help myself.
Wow. Yeah. It's running the show.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, now coming out of that, right, all of the effects of the terrible eating, the alcohol, all of that building into trying to figure out how to heal my body, because I already had long COVID. I didn't need all that other stuff on top of it. But I was internalizing all of so many emotions because I left my job in the middle of all of that because everything was so stressful at work. Part of that was due to things that happened related to COVID, but some of it was just the environment. And then starting my first business and then deciding, oh, I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to go into nutrition. I'm going to learn how to heal myself. And then making the decision to start the second business. It's like, just keep rolling, all that stress, all of that. Yeah, I can definitely think of several moments over the last few years where I've experienced this. And talking to my boyfriend, he loves barbecue. And when we started on this health journey, the barbecue was that, oh, I don't know if we're going to really be able to eat that so much anymore because coats everything in brown sugar and all the sauces. I'm like, let's think about how to do that on our own and make a healthier option so we can still Yeah, it's like watch the temperatures and how we're cooking those things to try to at least make it a little healthier.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, I read something a little bit earlier today about that, which reminded me like how you marinated can help to reduce the carcinogens in barbecuing, things like that. So,
Yeah,
yeah, no, I can see that. It's important to pay attention and be intentional about how we're eating because just like you said, otherwise the automatic pattern just takes over,
it
right?
does. It does. And even now, there's some days where I'm so stressed out. I know the first thing I want to do is just go get something to eat
Hmm.
instead of taking the time. I know I have plenty of food in my pantry. I have all the healthy things. All I have to do is make a little bit of effort to cook the meal. And there's some days where I just don't have it. And I'm sure the people listening to this can identify with that because we're all busy. We're taking care of our families, our jobs, all the things. And it's like, oh, the last thing you want to do when you get home or when you log off the computer, if you work from home, is to fire up that stove and cook something healthy. But, that's one of the things, those conscious steps, trying to build those good habits and not slide back. Because the last thing I want to do is find myself in a Whataburger drive-through.
And to be fair, having or experiencing or practicing emotional eating on occasion that's not where the problem lies, right? Because some people who are listening might hear this and think if they're doing this maybe once or twice a month or around their period or whatever, they may think, oh my God, am I an emotional eater? Is this something I need to seek help for? And I would say no, it's really only when, again, it's your primary coping mechanism, like reaching out and looking for connection or finding rest or going for a walk. Like if you have no other coping mechanism but to eat, then yes, I think that's when it can become a problem. And I do see it in terms of it leading to overweight and obesity, among
Mhm.
other things, dysregulated eating, etc. However, if it's just one of a multitude of things that you can do when you're feeling big emotions, that's not what I would call emotional eating, but where
No,
it's a
and I
pattern.
thank you for pointing that out and breaking that down because we can have these generalizations a lot, especially in the healthcare industry, where people they have a sound bite or they see something, a little screenshot online, and then it can start like a whole new mental thing, wrapped around
Exactly.
that. So I think we've touched on why we find ourselves in these eating patterns, some of the things that we see ourselves doing and feeling, and how we're narrowing down subconsciously the choices that we allow ourselves to go in and just reach for whatever that food is, right? Whether it's the cake or the cookies or the hot dogs, whatever your choice food is, right? It's trying to make you just to feel better for a little while. So what can we do if we find ourselves in this pattern and we recognize it or we think we might be experiencing it? Like, what can we do to try to start breaking the cycle of that behavior?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I want to answer that question in two steps. One, I'd like to just highlight what might be the things that you would experience if you are in the midst of a emotional eating kind of cycle. And so one is that you're eating when you're not physically hungry. That's the other thing, right? It's like you're just eating as a response to some heavy emotion. The other thing that you would notice is that you have a craving. So it's for a specific thing that is either fatty, sugary, or salty. So, and it feels like very urgent, like I need chips right now.
Mhm.
Okay. The other thing that I see a lot is like feeling out of control or feeling ashamed after eating. So there may be a little bit of a binge eating component to the behavior. And then most of the time there is this feeling of shame or guilt that comes after indulging in whatever you've had. And in some cases, not often, but I have seen it where you may want to eat in secret. So maybe you'll run to the pantry at the end of the day when everybody's gone to sleep and eat in secret, or you'll buy the food and eat it in your car and then go into the home. Sometimes that can happen as well. And so the thing that I generally like to say as like the first step to breaking that cycle is the way that our brain is wired is that on a subconscious level, when something is happening automatically, you have all these neurons in our brains, so these are sending signals and they're firing together and they move together in concert, and they just go from step 1 to step 10 or whatever it is, like automatically, from when the trigger is the trigger being like, whether it's stress, boredom, the emotion is what I'm calling the trigger, is first realized or experienced. And so the most important thing to begin the process of rewiring is to break that connection. And you can do that by making an intentional pause. So just stopping and saying to yourself, whether you need to take a breath or take a sip of water, but when you experience that emotion, practicing, and it can be difficult in the beginning, especially when this is not a skill or a muscle that you have used in the past or used often, to say, okay, take a deep breath and then check in with your body and think, what am I experiencing right now? And what do I really need, right? Am I hungry for food or am I hungry for something else? And sometimes you still carry on the remaining steps that lead to you emotionally eating. But the point of pausing and breaking that connection over time, that intentionality, can give you that potential to make a different decision. And that's the key there, is to give you that pause to make a different decision.
So would you recommend that maybe we try to go for a short walk or distract ourselves with something else for a little while just to see if we're still feeling that hunger in a few minutes, that drive? Or
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that it'll definitely be different for different people as to what would soothe you in the moment. One thing that I generally share is something called a hunger satiety scale, which you probably have heard of and maybe have used as a nutritionist. But I think that's important to tie what you're feeling to your body. So getting back into that mind-body connection, because the scale asks, like, is your stomach grumbling? Are you feeling irritable? It asks you, are you experiencing true physiological signs of hunger? And allows you to be like, oh, let me check in with my body and see, am I experiencing any of these things? So that's one thing you can do, and it could possibly be a distraction in that sense. And the other thing is, once you realize, okay, I don't need food right now, I'm actually not hungry, I'm just feeling lonely, then you can start to say, okay, what would help me to feel less lonely? Maybe I call my friend. Maybe I take a minute to text a friend and check in on them, or ask something to that effect. And then if it's, let's say it's anger, what would bring me down from my anger? Maybe in that case, a walk would be great, or a sip of water, or whatever it is. So I think that it's important to, again, check in with yourself and see and ask yourself, what is it that you need, by first acknowledging, okay, this is what I'm feeling. What would make me to feel the opposite of this, or to feel this a little bit less?
I really like that. And the idea of reaching out and texting someone or calling someone, I really like that, just from the perspective of you're making a connection outside of the situation that you find yourself in that moment. And even if you don't talk about whatever it is you're feeling right now, you're still making connection and stepping outside of that. So I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we're noticing and we're trying to do these things, like we're trying to take that pause, we're trying to do that brain rewiring, and we're really struggling, what do we do from there?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think at that point, it's really important to seek professional help, whether that's through a therapist, a coach, your physician, your healthcare team, but really reaching out to professional help to see how things can be better for you. And I want to leave that intentionally vague and open, because it's going to be very different for different people. It's very rarely cut and dry. There's often other things underlying it, maybe some anxiety, depression, eating disorder that is tied in with the emotional eating. And so a good place to start is with your healthcare team. If there is a component of mental health that needs to be addressed, and reaching out to a mental health professional as well. But it's important to, two things. It's important to realize, one, that you're not alone. This is something that so many of us are struggling with. So many of us women are struggling with, that maybe we don't talk about because it's not polite conversation, but it's happening. So understanding that you're not alone is sometimes because it can feel isolating, but understanding that you're alone will hopefully encourage the next step, which is to reach out for help if you need it, and not to try to troubleshoot it or chat GPT it on your own.
Oh, my good friend chat. When we're thinking about making that shift from the reactive eating to the proactive eating, like understanding, okay, I'm actually hungry right now versus I need to fill the hole, whatever that hole is, the anxiety, the fear, the stress, all of those things. But as we're starting to shift out of that and those pauses are starting to work and we're starting to feel more confident about handling the decisions, what would you recommend just starting to replace some of those foods, the trigger foods, trying to make your living space a little bit easier to function in, so like you're setting yourself up to make those better decisions?
Yeah, that's a really good question. One thing that we go over is with my clients is just making sure, just like you said, that you're set up for success, and planning ahead is one of those things that you can do to set yourself up for success. Not skipping meals is one, right? So a lot of times people will skip meals for different reasons. Either they're too busy or they are trying to be in a calorie deficit, and so they're not eating regularly or eating well. And so making sure that you are eating when your body asks you to, as opposed to prolonging that intentionally for whatever reason. The other is trying to make sure you have a balanced meal. So really paying attention to hitting your macros. And so that means your protein, your fat, your and then I include fiber really when it comes to health in general as well, and water. So those are what I really say to focus on. You want to divide your plate up. Half of it should be vegetables, a quarter of protein and carb. So I teach people that concept when it comes to eating. And so the reason that's important is that often when you're eating more balanced meals, you're in a better place emotionally and mentally because you're feeding your gut in a healthful way.
Yeah.
I think that what doesn't get talked about often enough, in my opinion, is the importance of gut health in mental health. And so understanding and knowing that over 90% of our serotonin is produced in our gut, like that's a lot. And
we could do a whole nother episode just talking about that. Like there's so much there.
Exactly.
And people wouldn't think about it.
People, exactly. So understanding that if you're feeding that, then it's going to be this positive reinforcement loop of like better mental health, as where you're not eating well and so you're continuing to feel poorly. So those are the two things that I would say. And then also setting yourself up for success in terms of keeping foods that we consider junk food in our society. I tend to not like to use that word because all food is good food. It's just a matter of, is this going to further your goal and mission, right? Whether your health goal and mission, et cetera. And so keeping foods that don't contribute to that out of the home. So there's just that extra barrier of you getting dressed, getting in the car, driving down to the store, and you're just like, the way that we are like that about going to the gym, I want you to be like that about going to get that Whataburger.
Yes. That's the biggest thing that works for me, is to just not have it in the house. David loves ice cream, and when he goes to the store by himself, he will bring it into the house and then put it in the freezer, and then I see it and I'm like, I want the ice cream. Like, but I'm like, no, I don't.
And maybe you have a tablespoon versus a full spoon.
And I have
right?
done that. done that. Because
So
to me, it's a challenge. It's like, can I just eat the 1 tablespoon?
Are you able to? Yeah, you have to know yourself. Like, am I the kind of person that can stop at a tablespoon? And some days you do, and some days you don't.
Yeah, some days I'm not able to do that, and that's okay, because it's not every day. Like we were talking about earlier, I don't reach for the ice cream all the time, so it's the occasional treat. Yeah. I like to make those the destination, the date nights. Okay, we've done really good. We're feeling great. We're in a good place. We're going to go celebrate a little bit and splurge a little bit while we're out, and then it's okay. Next day, you're just making dinner again. And I think that helps us a lot to keep our diets in alignment.
Yeah, I think definitely finding balance is important because it's not an all or nothing. And I think that in my experience with working with my clients is when we have a very restrictive and scarcity mindset when it comes to anything, including food, is where things can backfire and sabotage our efforts. So balance is always important. You want to make sure that the balance tips towards your goals most of the time, right?
For sure. For
Yeah.
sure. You got to eat your greens.
Yeah. Take and really seeing what I really love to help encourage my clients to see is that can be a part of enjoying your food, right? I'm sure you see this as well, because oftentimes eating vegetables feels like taking your medicine. And with working with my clients, I encourage them to approach it definitely from this is part of what it is to enjoy food, is to be able to enjoy vegetables as well as the burger. And whether that means you cook it a different way or you learn how to cook. A lot of patients, a lot of people don't know how to cook. And so they've only seen their parents either boxed meals or seen one way of doing things. And so understanding how to use seasoning to make broccoli even taste good. Yes, broccoli can taste really good is really also important. So if that's what you need, then take a cooking class.
No, that's super important. Like, I grew up in a meat and potatoes, canned veggies household.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so not a lot of flavor, not a lot of diversity in the food. And it took me a very long time to really step out of that habit and start experimenting with flavors.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing my son and I did when he was little was we would go to the grocery store every week and get a new vegetable.
Yes, I did
We
that
would
as
look
well.
at recipes and we would decide together which recipe do we want to try. That way I could get some buy-in. That way we're having an educational moment, but at the same time we're experimenting together. And some days it worked out great, and other days we took one bite, threw it in the trash, you know.
But I love that you brought your son into that, because how beautiful for him to see that behavior modeled to him. And I'm sure that he'll model that behavior for his children, to just incorporate more vegetables and to have, even like you said, if you didn't enjoy it, you at least had the experience of trying something new and deciding, as opposed to being like, oh, it's green, I don't want it.
Yeah. I mean, that's how we learned. He loves his spinach. He loves red Swiss chard. We make a little corn salsa with it. He loves it. Just things that he never would have experienced if we hadn't gone through that. And then as I've embarked on my healing journey, I have a whole drawer in the kitchen now, and everything is alphabetized in order. That way there's no stress trying to figure out where your spices are. So a little OCD, but it works for me. I just pull the drawer out. It's like, okay, I've got almost every spice you can think of that traditionally would be used. It's like, all right, what are we going to do today? Let's just play with some flavor, see what happens. And I've made the most amazing zucchini and cauliflower, and I promise you, even 5 years ago, I would have been like, I'm never going to eat that.
Love that, Lieah. I really love that.
So there's definitely hope out there for everyone. If you don't know how to cook, if you don't like to cook, there are a lot of simple recipes and ways that you can learn how to experiment and make it a game, learning some of these new foods.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to take forever. I think that's another barrier, is always going to take forever. No, it actually doesn't. A lot of times I do a lot of set it and forget it type foods. I'll just put it in the oven and come back and do some work, or I'll get home and I'll throw it in the oven, go take a shower and come back and it's ready, or the air fryer. So there's ways to get around that. You just have to first start with the mindset that it's possible for you, and then you'll find the way that works.
Yes. Yes. So I know we only had a little bit of time booked for today, so I want to make sure we have enough time for you to give some advice for the woman that's out there listening to this. What are some things that you wish you had known at the beginning of this journey? Being able to share some of that wisdom, having walked this path to help us get started, and then share a little bit about how we can reach out to you if we're interested in learning more about your services and what you do.
Yeah, I'd love to share. So something that I really feel in my core and want to share is that, like, your body is not the enemy, and emotions are not something to fix. They're just messengers. They're just there to tell you what's going on. And I think it's really important for anyone listening to this to start listening to what your body is trying to tell you, as opposed to pushing through, because that's something I did for the longest time.
Yeah.
Just as a physician, right? And then getting my double board, like it's just go, 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 go. And a lot of us are stuck in busyness, and our bodies are trying to say something to us and we're just pushing through that. So I really truly believe that when we stop fighting with our own bodies and start listening, things can start to shift. So taking time to listen to what your body is trying to tell you, either practicing mindfulness on a regular basis or even just in the moment when you're starting to feel that, is really important. And then responding rather than reacting. And so that's the difference between really nourishing your body with what it needs rather than reacting by reaching for food to soothe or whatever. There are other harmful habits, but we're talking about emotional eating today for sure. And then you can find me on Instagram at Albidaya Wellness. Hopefully it'll be in the show notes, but it's okay, perfect. Or visit my website. I have a free resource there on emotional eating. I've got a quiz that then leads to this. You'll get emailed a video of a masterclass I did on emotional eating. And that's in addition to some other resources you can find on my website. And then you can just contact me through Instagram. You can DM me if you wanted to, or email me.
Okay, great. And I know it's a little bit off topic, but you had a retreat this past weekend, right?
I did. Yes, I did. So one of the things that I love doing is bringing women together in community and allowing for shifts to happen in real time. And so I put together this luxurious retreat in Houston where they came to this beautiful, beautiful home. And we just spent the day talking about stress, and we talked about how to rewire your stress on a subconscious level. There was delicious food from a local restaurant that was very gut healthy. We had just a beautiful discussion about stress, and we learned some tools about how to deal with stress. So that is something that I hope to continue to build, is these experiences for women.
That's so exciting. I know I missed it, and I've got a severe case of FOMO right now because I needed it so bad, so bad.
You'll have to, yes, you'll have to attend my next.
It's like stress management. Yes, please help me.
It is much. I wish I had this a few years ago, and so I'm just paying it forward now that I've found tools that help me to stay grounded.
That's awesome. Well, thank you again for coming on the show today. I think we've covered a lot of ground, and I really hope that the ladies listening to this take the advice to heart. It's a long road to learn a lot of the things that we go to school for, but more importantly, the time in seat, the time working with people and experiencing and learning from each other is huge. And so please, if you have any kind of issues with emotional eating, or you think you might, if you can't reach out to Dr. Aalia personally, please talk to your personal physician or your therapist. Reach out to your insurance company, see what your options are, just to make sure that you can start that first little step on your path to wellness.
Beautifully said, Lieah. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for joining me today on the Inflamed and Exhausted Podcast. If this episode helped you connect the dots or gave you a new perspective, I'd love it if you'd follow the show and leave a quick review. It helps more women find this message. Remember, healing isn't about being perfect. It's about staying curious, staying kind to yourself, and taking the next best step. I'll see you next time.